All right. Welcome back from lunch, everybody. It's me again. Welcome to All On and All the Time, Actsafe conference, television, motion picture stream. I'm all over the place, apparently. And I was looking at myself at the last couple of sessions, and I had to apologize for the shirt that I'm wearing. I just noticed that it's wreaking havoc with some screens, namely mine. And I was like, oh my, poor choice of shirt today. But 'tis what it is, and it's better than the alternative right here, right now. So here we go. Welcome to my introduction on the latest Actsafe course that will hit the slate of offerings at Actsafe in a couple of weeks. This is an introduction into our new locations hazard identification workshop. And I want to thank at this time my friends at the International Cinematographers Guild Local 669 for sponsoring this session. Thank you so much. I hope you guys take away a little bit of information from this course. And it says Locations Hazard Identification Workshop. It's not specific to the locations department, but we'll get into that a little bit more as we move forward. Let's move forward, shall we? So you probably saw this if you were in the last session. Who is this guy? That is me, of course. A little bit about me that I'm not going to dwell.
You're not sharing on. Just yet.
Not sharing yet, eh?
No.
Well, of course not. Why should things go smoothly? I shouldn't have had Swiss chalet for lunch. Is what I should not have had. There we go. Okay. So who is this guy? Like I said, if you were in the last session, same slide as before. This is me. And if you weren't in the last session, then a little bit of a primer about myself. I've been with Actsafe for 8.5 years, and before that, I was in the production world as a location scout, primarily, as well as an assistant locations manager in the office doing the prep kind of stuff and location managing. I've also produced and directed a few things, and have production managed a bunch of other things for other people, shorts, basically short films and such. And what do I do here? Well, I help to design a lot of the educational offerings as well as other resources at Actsafe. So our information sheets, any other information that's put out to the industry, as well as consulting with for the industry on health and safety matters on their productions. Okay. What is this course about? Whole EV, by the way. And it did it again. I don't know why it does this. Whenever I go into presentation mode, all my justifications move to the right, which is really weird. So Pole EV, if you were in the last session that I did at Joint Health and Safety, it's the same address. You know how to work this. And when we get to our first session, I think Aiden is probably going to put the link into the chat as well. www.poleev.com/actsafe. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. Really, really useful if you have a second device, namely a telephone or iPad, tablet of some sorts, that helps play the games that we will play in this particular session. Okay, so what's this all about now? Why did we develop a locations hazard identification workshop? Well, we have a bunch of documentation. We created a new document, actually, based on some old documentation, the locations hazard assessment. So we took a look at that and we consulted with industry. And the one thing we kept hearing from the people in the locations department is that, hey, we are always asked to use this old form from Actsafe, and it's rather outdated, but it's the only thing we got, and this is what we're using, and so forth, and so on and so forth. But then another question came to mind, and another point was always brought up when it came to using the worksheet. Are these people, or do they know what to look for, where to get information to fill out the sheet? And lastly, now that they've got a sheet filled out, what do they do with that sheet? Where does it go? So to answer all of these questions, and I'm a big proponent of whenever Actsafe puts out a resource such as a worksheet, a form, or whatever it is, there has to be two things that happens. There has to be, first of all, the form and the development of the form. And then there has to be some knowledge downloaded onto the end user training, information on how to use the form. Right? This is one thing to have a great form, but if we don't know what the intent of the form is or how to fill out the form or what to do with the form after it's done, then the form generally ends up dying on someone's desk, and it's not of any use. So why did we develop this workshop? To answer these questions, give locations members specifically information on how to fill out this form, what to look for when they're doing a location's hazard assessment activity on the worksite, when it needs to be done, what specifically to look for, where the information goes after that, and what their role is in that whole process. So that's what we're going to talk a little bit about this afternoon. Why was this workshop developed? It's a 2-hour interactive in-person workshop. So this is not something that we aim to deliver virtually. We hope to deliver this in here at the Actsafe offices in person so that we can have this discussion and actually go out into whether it's the parking lot or it's the underground or somewhere close by and actually put that form into use. So it's an interactive in-person workshop. We've aimed 2-3 hours. We have not delivered it yet, so we don't know exactly the timing, but we're pacing it out for about 2 hours. And this course, like I said, we hope to just give the employers, supervisors, workers in the industry the basic knowledge of how to understand what is important, why it's important to identify and categorize and pass along the hazards on a worksite, and then what their role is in that whole hazard risk assessment process. So that's the general idea of this course. What are you going to learn in this workshop? Well, there's a couple of points. 5 general points is what we're planning to hit. How to identify and categorize hazards on a worksite. How you can reduce the risks associated with those hazards. The importance of documentation. How do you document? What do you do with the documentation? Why do we need to document? Location hazard identification, the actual process, and then the person's role within the process. And that's what we're going to talk about, not necessarily part of the workshop, but part of this little chat. How can I take this fabulous workshop? Sign me up. So that's basically what we are looking at now. Whoops. Me animations are all off a little bit. Okay, so hazard identification, risk assessment. So what is hazard identification? And we're going backwards. Hazard identification is the process of finding, listing, and characterizing hazards. That's what hazard identification is. So it's part of the big risk assessment thing. So I'll go back a little bit in time. The risk assessment is what you see in front of you now. This is the overall process or method where you identify the hazards and risk factors. You analyze and evaluate the risk associated with that particular hazard, and then you determine how to tackle that hazard. What do you need to do? What controls you need to put in place to control the hazard? So the identification process is the first step, right? Hazard identification. That is what, and that is only what we are talking about in this workshop. We're not going to delve deep into the whole risk assessment side of things. Hazard identification, okay? And I guess, well, we're coming back with this now. Animation's not working. I need somebody. Is there anybody in the animation local here that can help me out with this? No? Anyways, there we go. So a little bit of a refresher. For those of you, this might be new information. For some of you, this might be old school thought. But there are 5 categories that hazards fall into. In the chat, can anybody name them real quick? You didn't think audience participation was a part of this, but is it? But it is. 5 hazard categories. What are they? Chemical is 1. Biological is 1. Yes. Physical, 3. We got 3 out of the 5. Good. Environmental? No, unfortunately. Not one of the big 5. Biological, chemical. Electrical would fall under physical. Structural, I think we can put that under physical. Ergonomic is one, yes. Radiation. Safety, not necessarily a category, but so far we've got physical, ergonomic. Ergonomic is different than physical. Ergonomic, physical, chemical, biological. The last one is kind of hard. Nobody thinks about this, but it is a very big hazard category. Nobody thinks about this. Psychological, Emily, that's close enough. Psychosocial. So here they are, physical. So things that can physically harm us, slips, trips, falls, physical harm in that respect. Chemical, pretty self-explanatory. Biological. So any biological hazards, whether that's pathogens or whether that is animals or environment, trees, allergies, that type of thing. Psychosocial, anything that plays on the mind. Bullying and harassment is a psychosocial hazard. And then, yeah, ergonomic, lifting, pushing, pulling, sitting, how we sit, how we interact with machinery. All those things are categorized as an ergonomic hazard. Okay, so there's your 5 different hazards. Next up, we're going to take a look at a website here. So let's take a look at this. Okay, hold on. Whoop. There we go. I have to click on that. So let's take a look at this worksite in 360. And this is one of the activities that we would normally do live and in person. So instead of, we can't be live and in person and do this, can't come out to the Actsafe office right now and do this in person. So we've decided to do it virtually. So here's our virtual worksite. And once again, using the chat, this is always a really good angle here with this photograph. What hazards, so what in this photograph could hurt us? Does tripping hazards? Yes. There's all this stuff on the ground. What else we got? Propane tank, definitely. So a bunch of you have identified that. I'm going to scroll over here. The armchair moldy, it doesn't look like something I'd want to sit in. So yeah, we can say that. Electrical for sure. And as we can see here, there's some good electrical probably right there, right under the safety first sign. Looks like cabling. Probably not live, but you never know, right? So good on you, Kelly. Yeah, electrical for sure. Generally uneven ground, right? Anything above us? Anything going to fall on our heads? There's a nice looking little cable plugged into something there. The sideways safety sign, this one right here. Yeah. So it looks like a rather dilapidated ladder, not something that I want to climb on. But you get the gist, right? Are we exposed to the elements? Yeah, it looks like right in the middle here. This is somewhere that doesn't look like it's covered. Definitely sunlight coming in. But there's other hazards in here. And I was actually, thank you, Jackie. There's other things that we're not necessarily seeing that could be a hazard. The structural integrity of the building that we're in. Is there asbestos, mold, rodent, animal feces, all of those things, possible dust, silica, or other, yeah, all of those things, right? So we've got a bunch of people who are safety-minded and safety professionals in this room, and they know what to look for. When we're doing a hazard identification exercise or when we're doing a risk assessment in general, we know we've been trained to look for these certain things or to recognize the signs of these certain things. If I'm working in the locations department and I'm handed a form and I'm told, okay, we need to do a risk assessment of that form. Here you go. Get it back to me before we film. Do I have the knowledge of how to do that? Possibly not. It's not something that people in the locations department or in production in general are forced to learn before they go set forth on a production on the floor, right? That is what this this whole course is about, is arming those people with the knowledge they need to be able to do their jobs successfully. So here's another little example, and there's a set piece that I was on way back in the day. A couple of pictures here. We're going to go to polev.com to participate in this one, and you're going to find there's 6 hazards I've highlighted on this picture when you go to the next slide here. And if you want, here's one way of going about it. You can scan this QR code with your phone and you'll go right into the activity. And if you're not already in it, if you are already in it, then click on and you see people have already started doing this. So there's a bunch of hazards here. Click on them. There's 6 of them here. And if you're on a phone, by the way, turn it this way and the picture will become larger. You can answer up to 6 times. Okay, I see 23 people have responded. I'll let you go for a little bit longer. I think we have a maximum of 104 answers based on 17 people. Actually, that includes me and you too, Aiden, right? So 15 times 6, 90. 90 responses. Oh, and I should also mention, if you can't get onto Poll EV, don't worry about it. They don't have to. You can always, if you want, put your answers in the chat as well, if that's easier for you. So it looks like we've slowed down a little bit. I think we're going to get as many answers as we've got. Okay, 5 seconds before I reveal the answers. 4, 3, 2, 1. So, how many hazards did we find? Let's see if you were all correct. Well, yeah, there is the cable on the stairs that's running across the stairs. So that is definitely a tripping hazard. We could possibly fall out of this little hallway thing. There's nothing preventing us from going over the edge. So a fall from height for sure. Paint cans. I don't know if that's what you were pointing at. Paint cans are the chemical hazard, right? So that's in there. There's some stuff in the fire lane. That is a hazard in itself, right? Stuff tripping, slipping, falling over things, especially if we're in an emergency evacuation type of situation where we rely on the perimeter of the soundstage to be clear. That stuff in the sound or in the fire lanes really is a big hazard. What else we got here? The generally low lighting in the background of this. Behind me, the stage doors are open, which is what provides the majority of the light in this soundstage. So it might be, while the foreground is very well lit because this giant bay door is open, the background, not so much. A lot of mess on this work site. Cluttered work site for sure. And I think that's the 6 that I've identified, but I know other people have identified some other things which are definitely hazard. There is a machine in the middle of this work site, right? So there's that. There's some other machinery up there. There's other tripping hazards such as the paint paper or the paint protection paper and the tape that's on the ground here, cables all over the place. So yeah, there's lots going on here, right? We've done a good job in identifying any hazards. Is there anything else anybody wants to bring up specifically that they feel is a hazard here that I might have missed? Looks as the machine is being used to hold up panels. Yeah, those black panels, for sure. Yeah. If we move that away, those panels go sliding down. Sure. There's a hazard. Nobody actually mentioned, and even myself, that the panels, the clutter, the ducting here, all of these things could present an ergonomic hazard, right? There's the possibility that somebody could get hurt moving these things, not lifting it properly, or whatever have you. Chemical hazards from the genie itself. So there's lots to dig into here. Okay, so this is the first step, and this is what we focus on in this workshop when it comes to teaching or giving participants the tools they need to do the job properly. From there, the course moves into the importance of documentation and does introduce one of Actsafe's newest forms, a revamp of the locations hazard worksheet. So if you are familiar with this document from even a year, 2 years ago, it was not a very well received document, so much so that people in the industry stopped using it because it asked a whole bunch of different information and didn't provide you with any guidance as to how to get that information. One of the reasons why we have the course now. So the importance of any kind of documentation, whether it's Actsafe's locations hazard worksheet or your own recording system, a worksheet or some type of documentation is a useful tool to help us identify any potential hazards at every possible location we are filming in. This can't be done just once in the production. It has to be done for every place we are filming in. Actually, I should change that. Not filming in, every place we're working in. So construction shops, lockups, production offices, special effects shops, all of this should have some sort of hazard identification and risk assessment done per worksite, right? Keeping safety in mind when scouting and surveying locations, this form will give, once people start using the form, they will become more familiar with what they should look for while on location or while scouting or while surveying locations, right? If we're going back to the location, we might not necessarily have to do this exercise again. We could go back and at least pull the information from the last time we were at this location, and it might be, so it's easy enough to just go to the location and see if these are still in play or if anything else has changed, but at least it gives us a launch pad when we move forward to the next time we visit that recurring location, okay? In addition, here's the big point. The locations hazard worksheet does point out to you what questions to ask of owners of locations we're filming in. And that could be owners, that could be the liaison companies that the locations department deals with that are representing the ownership of the property. It gives them some idea of what to ask for so that others can do the risk assessment part of it with the proper information, right? Because at the end of the day, while the employers have a responsibility to ensure a safe and healthy worksite, building and landowners as well are responsible for informing the occupants of their property about hazards on their property. So we need to ask for the hazards that might not be readily visible to us. So go back to that 360 photo. Do we know if there's asbestos in there? Do we know if there's lead paint? Those types of things. Right? What was this place used for exactly? Right? So those are the questions we hope to provide guidance and to help people answer. Yeah, so what does this location hazard worksheet look like? There is your the first half of it, or the first part of it, I should say. Like I said, it's the first step in establishing a safe worksite. We have to identify any potential hazards that exist on the worksite we're visiting, all worksites. So while it says locations hazard worksheet, it's not specific to the locations department. Anybody can use this worksheet. And the way that we formatted this, we have developed it with consultation with the locations department as well as production managers and other departments a year and a bit ago now. And it's laid out so that it provides an easy way to document all of the information that's needed to move to the next step in the process. And I mentioned this a couple of times already. It just gives people the guidance, the locations personnel specifically when they're going on location, about what safety issues to look for, because they don't know everything about every location we visit. So how is this broken down? Well, first part of it, section 1, these are the questions that we ask the owner or the property manager, and you can see we've included the regulation for the Workers' Compensation Act, section 25. Every owner of a workplace must provide and maintain the owner's land and premises that are being used in a workplace as in a manner that ensures the health and safety of persons at or near that workplace. And that little line on its own will give a lot of guidance to the locations folk on what the responsibilities of the owner or the property manager or the property representative is. So this section is a good chunk of the document. There's lots of questions here to ask of location owners or property managers. That's what this is for. Beyond that, the next part of it, visual inspection. So this is something that you, myself, locations folks, production managers, anybody can actually go onto a work site and do a visual inspection. And they include facilities, ventilation, washrooms, lighting, traffic control, access control, all of those types of things. And it's a pretty simple yes, no type of a thing. Do you see this? Yes? Tick mark, off you go. Whoops. Beyond that, section 3, we talk about weather conditions. What's the weather going to be like? And we're looking for you to become a weather person, meteorologist of some sort. What is it going to look like? What could be of a hazard should this type of weather occur? I know we don't have a crystal ball, but best guess is acceptable, I would think. Safety notices. For production, are there any safety notices that we need to think about putting onto the call sheet? And then what emergency response is there? Are there fire extinguishers already there? Is there a fire suppression system? Does it have a first aid room? Do we have to live under or work under any safety requirements of the location itself? So all of those things. And then a little bit of space for you to identify any hazards that might not be listed in the form as well, and what conditions and considerations need to be taken into place. So that's the worksheet in general. At the end of this, there is a little bit of a distribution list type of thing that I'm going to show you in a couple of seconds while we delve into the locations hazard worksheet online. So here's what this is the live version of the thing, and all of these forms are fillable, so you can fill it out with whatever you want. Fill it out in. Prep, shoot, wrap dates and times if you know what they are. Interior, exterior, and a lot of these, like I said, they're clickable, whatever have you. Here's the form itself. And once again, these fields are all clickable, yes and no. And you can type in details like when the hazard assessment has been performed in the past, such as their dates and things. All these questions, I would not think that anybody in the locations department would have the answers to right off the get-go. And some of them you're going to have to find a little bit of outside guidance from, right? Yeah, I'm not too sure exactly how a locations person would determine this. This is why it's in section 1, ask the owner. Okay. So then the visual inspections, pretty easy. And this is, like I said, do you see this? Can you experience this? Yes or no, type of things. A little bit of guidance from WorkSafe BC as to how, what the requirement is for handrails, stairways, because this is another question that we get all the time. Well, there's 4 steps. Do we really need to have a handrail on it? There you go. Access, egress, ventilation. washrooms, lights, traffic control, and then a little bit of background on working at heights and fall protection. Confined space, the weather conditions. We'll scroll down to the bottom here. Completed by, this is not a signature, this is just, hey, this is the person who completed it, and when it was completed. And then the distribution list. And so this is a form that is downloadable in PDF form right now. We are looking at putting this on our STAR system as a form itself. So once one of the functionalities we're looking for with this form specific is the distribution list and the ability to customize it so that if you want this to go to the special effects coordinator or the stunt coordinator or whoever have you, you can add these positions down here. You can add names to these and put email addresses in them. So once you hit, there will be another button. Once you hit submit, it automatically sends a form to these people. That's a functionality we're looking at. I'm not going to guarantee anything. Beyond that, yeah, you can print the form, you can save it and save it as a PDF, email it to somebody, or you can reset it and start all over again. So this is available on our website right now. You can use this moving forward. I know a couple of productions have started using it right now, but the idea behind the course, or the workshop, I should say, is the next level of this. Take this form, show how it is to be used on the worksite. Okay. Moving on with the course itself, the next step is the process. Process? What process? Well, there's a process to everything, or there should be a process to everything. And when it comes to the risk assessment process, there's no different. Hazard identification is one step in that process. And within that one step, there is also a process. Yeah, confused yet? I know I confused myself. But this is what the process looks like for the whole risk assessment part of it. Okay, so we identify a hazard, we complete the hazard worksheet, you pass that worksheet on to somebody who's going to do the risk assessment side of things, whether that's the producer, the production manager, production safety, first AD. That production determines who that is, and those are the people that do the risk assessment. And not asking anybody who takes this course to do the risk assessment itself. Put control measures in place, monitor and review control measures, and then rinse and repeat. Keep going around, right? So where does the person who's taking this course fit into this? First three steps. If you're a participant in the course, you're here because you need to know how to identify hazards. You're here because you need to know how to complete this form, and you're here because you're the one that's going to pass it on to the next person, and that's it. Not your responsibility to complete a risk assessment, put the controls in place, and then monitor those controls. That's production. And that has to be defined by each individual employer. So that's not where we're getting into in this workshop. Okay. So who should take this workshop then? Like we've identified that generally it's the locations people that would need this information, right? So absolutely, if you're in the locations department, this is for you. Location managers, ALMs, scouts, trainee ALMs, and key PAs, I think are all great people to have in this workshop. It'll give them the tools and the knowledge necessary to be able to do their job efficiently. They're definitely who we are gearing this towards. But that's not all. If you're a supervisor, producers, production managers, assistant directors, if we're department heads or if we're coordinators or if we're leads or rigging heads, so the rigging grips, the rigging electrics, the rigging gaffer, those folks, this course or workshop is for you too, because there's a bunch of people that might not know this information in those departments, yet they're the first ones on the work site to start setting up for the rest of the crew to show up. And maybe they see things a little differently than somebody in the locations department. They bring another set of eyes to the process. And that's what we want. We want as many people to take a look at this, and everybody has to be responsible for the safety on the work site. So all of these people definitely should take this workshop. Okay. I'm sold. you might be saying, I know all of you are thinking this in your brain. I'm sold. How do I sign up? Well, we're still working out that process yet. It should be open for registration soon. You'll find out more on our website. We're aiming for the latter half of March 2022. So look for us in about 3 to 4 weeks to start actually offering it. But registration will open up very, very soon. We're limiting it to 16 people in the office here in our classroom. It'll be some stuff outside, and when the weather is decent enough that we can go out and do an assessment on location, or in the underground parking lot, we can all go in there, and we will have special guests available as well, so you can actually do a mock locations hazard identification exercise. So we've already lined up a few people to come in and play the roles of locations owners. So there, it'll be a little bit more fun. Keep an eye out on the safety scene, social media, our website, Facebook, all of those types of things. We will start launching, or we will launch at the end of March, but we will open up registration very soon. There isn't a dedicated page for this yet on our website, so there you go. Locations Hazard Identification Workshop. Any questions? Because I don't have that. I got nothing else. Anybody? Bueller?
I'm not seeing. I'm here. I'm still with you. I don't see any questions on the. Yeah. So.
All right. Well, if there's no questions,
our break sponsor.
Yeah, who is that? Set Protect, right?
Yeah.
So you guys get out 15. What do we got here? 20 minutes early. Oh, will there be one for outdoor events? I know this is good for film people, but Scouts may also need this. Oh yes, did I not put Scouts on the list? My old alma mater. Yeah, definitely for Scouts. Will there be one for outdoor events? I think the idea is to take this course. At least Don and Will probably take this course and modify it for live event and performing arts. That's the plan. That's generally how things work around here at Actsafe. They've developed something, and then I take it and switch it around and send it to the motion picture folks. And I develop something, they take it, switch it around, and fire it off to the performing arts side of things. So yeah, what the timeline is for that, I don't know. Okay, that is all.
So just a reminder, everybody, the last 2 sessions of the day for motion picture and performing arts are taking place in Zoom. The Zoom links have just been dropped in chat. They will be open shortly prior to the start. But just a reminder that we will not be in Remo for the last 2, but you will be welcome to come back to Remo after the final 2 to wrap up and chat and have a beer. And the bar is on the 9th floor, as it was last year. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, everybody.